أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المأسومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا واللعنة دائمة الباقية لأعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, sisters and brothers in Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullah. In our Tafsir of Surah at-Talaq, Surah number 65 of the Quran, we inshallah will be concluding with ayat number 7 this evening, which is the last ayat on this theme of talaq. So we're getting over it now. And then the theme slightly changes till the end of the surah. Although it is not a total change, there is connection between the first and the second theme. So let us look at this ayat number 7, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues the issue of providing for the divorced wife during the time of iddah, during the time from the talaq was recited till the 3 months or 3 cycles, or in case of a pregnant woman till the birth of the child. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this 7th ayah says, وَلِيُنْفِقُ ذُو سَعَةٍ مِّن سَعَتِهِ وَمَنْ قُدِرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقُهُ فَلِيُنْفِقْ مِمَّا أَتَاهُ اللَّهُ لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا مَا آتَاهَا يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ عَسْرٍ يُسْرًا. Basically, the content of this ayat is very simple and clear. Let the affluent man spend out of his affluence. Means those who are to provide, the person, the husband who is divorcing the wife during the time of the iddah, he has to provide. What should be the measure? And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذو سعة, the one who is blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has affluence, they should spend out of their affluence. وَمَنْ قُدِرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقُهُ, but the person whose provision and risk has been tightened, he is not among those who are ذو سعة, affluent, their hands are tied in a way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلْيُنْفِقْ مِمَّا أَتَاهُ اللَّهُ, then whatever Allah has given to him, within his means he has to provide. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا ما آتاها, because Allah does not task any soul except according to what He has given the individual. So Allah cannot ask someone to give more than what He has. يجعل الله بعد عسر يسرا, and Allah will bring about easiness after hardship. So let us look at this last ayat on this issue of talaq. And remember, as I had said many times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this Surah at-Talaq is dealing with what is technically known as talaq, out of the 3 types of divorces. This is where the husband is divorcing the wife. And so the first issue is the issue of, maintaining and providing. Now, when we talk about this affluence, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, let the affluent man spend out of his affluence, the issue is that, the standard of living that a person provided to the wife before the talaq has to be maintained after the talaq till the end of the iddah. So it's not that, now all of a sudden the words have been recited, so now, resources and the livelihood which is being pulled away. No. And this is very much different from what we see among many, many Muslim cultures. They just think that once talaq is done, that's it, get out. No, this is not what Islam says. You still have to maintain that standard of living that the husband provided before the talaq. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, if the person is restrained financially, وَمَنْ قُدِرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقُهُ, because the person's rizq has been restricted. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then his duty is to provide according to his means. Why? The answer is very simple. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا ما آتاها, because Allah cannot put a burden on a person more than his or her capability. This is a very general theme of Quran. In many issues, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I will never impose a duty on anyone beyond their ability. There is actually a very beautiful hadith, probably from Imam Raza alayhi salam or Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, where the Imam was talking about the concept of lutf. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is very graceful upon us. He's kind of merciful towards us, because He does not impose a duty on us to the level of our ability. He says, look at the issue of prayers. How many rakat are wajib? 17. But remember, there are many nafila prayers. Many people do that. And the total comes to 51. And so the Imam says, as far as the ability of a person is concerned, the ability within you to do, you can do 50 ayat or more, rakat. But what is wajib is only 17. So it's actually much lower than the ability that we have. Coming to fasting, what is wajib is 30 days of the month of Ramadan. But there are many righteous people who fast in Rajab and Sha'ban and Ramadan. There are many who fast on the first Thursday of every month, last Thursday of every month. These are the recommendations. And then the first, Thursday after, first Wednesday after the 13th of the month. And there are many other, days in the Islamic calendar where it's recommended. So there are people who actually can do more than 30 days. And it shows that as far as human capability is concerned, people can do more. 30 is not the maximum ability of fasting. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only says 30. When it comes to the issue of, for example, paying of zakat, the ability would be more than that. Even when we come to, for example, khums, we are talking about what? 20% of the savings. It's not the income tax. After whatever you spend, whatever is left, 20%. And we forget the 80%, we still have that. And this is where the ability is to give more than that. When we talk about Hajj, Imam uses that example. He says, Hajj is only wajib once in your lifetime. But there are many people. We have the Hajj there going every year. How many? 25, 30 years? There are many who have done this. Our Imams. Imam Hassan Mushtaba alayhi salatu wasalam. Imam Hussain, Imam Zainul Abidin. More than 20 times. At least 20 times we know that, he would actually go from Medina to Mecca by walking. And so the ability is more than once, but it's only wajib once. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I have never imposed on you a duty which is beyond your ability. Especially when it comes to these issues, the duties that you have towards one another, and the responsibility is left upon the individual. You are answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no revenue officer who is going to sit down and look at your numbers and come up with a calculation. Whatever you have, the way you are maintaining the standard of your wife after divorce till iddah, you have to maintain and continue in the same way. There is a very similar ayat to that in Surah Baqarah, ayat number 233, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is about maintaining the family. This is not even about the issue of divorce. وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ, that the mothers should suckle their children for 2 whole years. لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرِّضَاعَ, if they desire to complete the period of suckling. وَعَلَى الْمَوْلُودِ لَهُ رِزْقُهُنَّ وَكِسْوَتُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and the maintenance of the child and the mother and their clothing, that's clothing is just one example of their maintenance, must be borne by the father. Mawludun lah is the father there, according to bil ma'ruf, according to the norm of his ability. And so even the provision that we talk about, nafaqa, maintaining the family, there also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends by saying, وَلَا تُكَلَّفْ نَفْسٌ إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا, and no person should be obliged with a duty but to the extent of his capacity. And this is where we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very just and fair on this issue. Now that we have concluded with ayat number 7, I just would like to tie this with a couple of issues related to divorce. Since we have been talking about it, we'd just like to complete 1 or 2 things about it. I've been talking about optional conditions in marriage contract, especially when we were talking about the issue of some of the husbands or men who misuse their authority and would like to leave the wife suspended, neither married nor divorced. In that case also there are issues on the other side also. This issue of what about spousal support or alimony? Very common in Canada, and this is where we have to realize that the laws of the land and the laws of the Sharia are different. According to the law here in Ontario, because these are all provincial jurisdictions and different provinces have different rulings, if there is a divorce between husband and wife, when they talk about spousal support, remember it's not a wife's support or husband's support, it is spousal support. If there is a claim, basically the court will look at both partners, the husband and the wife, and the person with more income or assets may have to pay support to the other. So it can go both ways. It's not only the husband providing for the wife, it could be even the wife providing for the husband. This is the Canadian Ontario law. How much and for how long will that continue after divorce? Is it for lifetime? No, it all is left to the discretion of the judge. They look at the numbers and the case. But what is the Islamic perspective about it? And this is where I would say that even our sisters, we talked about the men quite a lot in the last 1 week. The sisters also have to think about these issues, whether even claiming such a thing after the iddah is acceptable from the Sharia point of view or not. When we talk about spousal support, from the Islamic point of view, the husband is required to provide the divorced wife only till the end of the iddah. And that also, as we saw in ayat number 7, according to his means and ability. After the iddah, there is no obligation upon the ex-husband anymore. As this is not an issue of maybe the Maraja have different fatwas. No, this is very clear cut. Once the iddah ends, the relationship is ended, the obligations are no more there. And so what about, division of assets after divorce? Because, one of the common things which happen here in the courts is that they go to the court and they need the, basically, the finance report from both sides, how much they have, what they have. And this is where we have to realize that when it comes to the Islamic perspective, whatever belongs to the wife will be considered her property, even after marriage. Or even within marriage, whatever she is given or she earned, it is her own property. It doesn't belong to the husband. Sometimes we are told, well, हमने इजाज़त दी थी कि बाहर जाए काम करें. The ijazat is ijazat only. That doesn't give you the right on the earnings of the wife. You could have said yes or no. But once you say yes, and if she's going out and working, her earnings are her earnings. You don't have a right on it. Of course, we are talking about mawadda and rahma, especially the lifestyle here in Canada. You cannot survive with one income. And so, there has to be understanding, but this is where the appreciation from the other side has to come up. And whatever belongs to the husband also will be considered his property. In case of assets jointly owned by them from the Sharia point of view, if both have their names on it, then it will be divided equally. But besides this, anything obtained by means of the secular court order against the wishes of the other spouse will be considered ghasbi. You know what is ghasbi? It's not mubah, not halal. So using it, getting it, becomes a problem, a serious problem from the Shari'i point of view. And this is where we have to realize that, when it becomes very, difficult in divorce cases, when these issues come up for discussion, always remember the 5 ayat of Surah at-Talaq. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ. Maintain the taqwa. If both sides maintain taqwa, and they have this fear of displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, things can be worked out. If there is mutual agreement, then it doesn't matter whether it's, it belongs to him or her, as long as they agree on things, mutually agreement, and consent is there, that's fine. Or if there is an optional condition included in the religious marriage. And I would just like to, give you an example of what we have on the website of the Jafri Center. You see, when we have the aqd and nikah in the Islamic system, one of the essential conditions without which the nikah would not be valid is mahr. That's a given. Everybody knows about it. Of course, mahr is not actually a guarantee against divorce. This is another big, myth and misunderstanding. Sometimes they say, let's put a very huge amount so the husband will not ever think of giving divorce. No, mahr is not really a guarantee against divorce. Mahr, technically in English, will be considered as it is consideration. You proposed, and the girl is accepting. One way of expressing your thanks for that acceptance is of, giving something. And that is known as mahr, marriage gift. It doesn't have to be rupees and dollars or shillings. It could be a symbolic thing. It could be a service that the wife is asking the husband to do. That you will go and, for example, volunteer in this project for 6 months. That can also become mahr. Mahr doesn't have to be monetary. It could be that you will give in charity for the orphans this much in my name. It could be that there was a person who came to the actually, a lady came to the Prophet and said, I want to get married. And Rasulullah asked them, is anybody willing to marry her? There was a fellow who said, I'm willing, but I don't have anything. As far as mahar is concerned. Then Rasulullah asked her, do you know how to read the, Quran? She said, no. Rasulullah asked him, do you know how to teach the Quran? He says, yes, I can do that. That became the mahar. That the husband will teach the wife how to read the Quran. And this is where, so it could be a symbolic thing, it could be a service, it could be a work. It could just be, sometimes people get very confused. They say, Maulana, what is your suggestion? And I said, if you want to go with, monetary item, you have different choices. I see people use this number 786, 110. Sometimes it's 786, 110. Of course, that's $786 and 110 cents. They put it at the end. But I said, if you really want to be very symbolic, just go for 14 roses in the name of the Masumin. So the mahar doesn't have to be in form of money. It is nothing to do with talaq. It is something which is payable immediately or unless the wife says, upon demand. And this is where, sometimes you see very huge amounts there, and we say, are you sure about it? You say, yes. And then at the time of divorce, they can't pay. It's thousands of dollars. And that's where shaitan comes in. They say, okay, let's do something that we change this talaq into khula. I don't want divorce, she wants divorce. Because in khula, then you can negotiate the issue of mahar. This is people play game with the Sharia laws. And this is where we don't have this understanding that mahar has nothing to do with divorce. It can be given immediately. And so that's the essential. So I was coming to this issue, what are the essential conditions in nikah? One is the issue of mahar. That's the only essential condition. Without mahar, there will be no valid aqd. But what about other conditions if you want to put there? What are known as the optional conditions? You can do that provided there is mutual agreement on both sides. Either party can propose a condition, and if other agrees, and if there's a mutual understanding between the two, that's fine. Maybe to be bride says, okay, I agree to marry you, but there's a condition, you don't take me away from my hometown. If the husband agrees to that, that can become part of the aqd. This is known as, shurut dhimn al-aqd, means the conditions which are attached to the aqd. And there is a provision in the Sharia for that, as long as the condition or the shart is not against the Sharia. That's the main thing. And so you can even actually put this issue, and this is just a suggestion. I'm just mentioning this because we have that as a guidelines, and people can look at it. One of the optional conditions is this issue of division of assets in case of divorce. What happens? And if you look at the writing that we have there, if the husband and the wife if the husband and wife divorce without any fault of the latter, so this is the husband who is divorcing the wife, then the husband agrees to give his wife half of the net family property as defined by the Ontario law that he acquired during the marriage period, excluding property that the husband acquired by gift or inheritance from a third person after date of the marriage. So you can actually play around, put many different scenarios in there. Or you can even just simply say that if the husband and the wife divorce, there will be equalization of net family properties as described in the Ontario's Family Law Act, so and so. If you do that, then what happens in the court would also be acceptable from the Shari'i point of view. So you are then trying to bring the Shari'i consent to what is done by the law of the land. Now, the most important thing is that this is based on options, where mutual consent is very, very important. Sometimes I see cases where they have been given the form at the time of engagement, but they never bothered to read it. At the time of nikah, then they say, okay, we want to include this. Nikah time is too late. Nobody is going to accept any optional conditions at the time of aqd. These issues are to be studied ahead of time. If there is agreement on both sides, it can be included. If there is no agreement, you leave that section unsigned, and it will not be part of the Shari'i aqd. Now, is this something we are doing here which is new and bid'ah? No. If you look at the nikah namas in India and Pakistan, you will see it's just one form, the legal size, 2 pages. You will see after mahr there is one column. It says sa'irish sharait or shurut. The ones I have seen is always blank. There is a line over it. But that is what it is. Sa'irish shurut are the optional conditions that both parties can include in their marriage contract, provided there is mutual agreement on that issue. And this is where one way of resolving this problem of division of assets, because it can become very a long-term impact on the relationship, especially if children are involved. It is something they have to think about it. Let me give you another example of what we have on those optional conditions, part of the aqd, and this is the delegation of authority of divorce to the wife. The authority is being given by the husband to the wife to get herself divorced under certain conditions. These conditions I have selected after observing situations for about 30 years living in this part of the world. The problems that we see where then we have to, send the case either to the marja or, use our own authority as the wakil of the marja, to settle the divorce against the consent of the husband. And these are the issues. Of course, as I said, this is not something new. If you go to Iran, the nikah is actually a booklet. And in the option conditions, they have 50 items. And you have to sign on each one, whatever you agree. Not all of them are signed. But, so we don't want to make it something, more difficult than buying a house. The papers you have to sign for the mortgage. The issue of marriage has to be very simple. But some of the issues that I have seen, and that is what I included, and this is where you see the husband hereby delegates to the wife an irrevocable authority or authorization to appoint an agent, a wakil, for divorcing her on behalf of the husband after giving a Shia Isna Shari religious authority, the reason to believe that the occurrence of any one of the followings has happened. Number one, if the husband solemnized a religious marriage with another woman without the permission of the wife named in this contract. The second, aqd. Now, this condition doesn't stop the husband from having a second wife. Legally, it's not acceptable here. But Shar'i, because there is polygyny in Islam, so we cannot violate the Islamic law But at least the first wife gets an way out of this situation of triangle relationship. So this is what it's doing. It's not stopping the husband from marrying a second wife. We can't do that. This is the haqq that Quran has given to the men. But then she gets this option that if the husband didn't seek her consent, then she can, if she wants, she can get out of that relationship. Number two, if the husband ill-treats or physically abuses the wife. The reason why we had put this condition that these events have to be proven to the religious authority is because sometimes, and it's said that one of the first things sometimes the immigrants learn here is how to call 911. When there are disputes, instead of going to those who are related to them or their relatives or going to a religious scholar, for counseling, immediately 911. Especially this is done by the wives. And when this is done, remember that once the police comes in, it is not something that you can just cancel and say to police, okay, I changed my mind. Then it's not you and the police. It is police and your husband. Even if you're out of the picture, the case will still go on. And so remember, this is a very serious issue. Yes, if there is physical abuse, I don't think we should tolerate it at all as a community. It is not acceptable. But sometimes this whole process is misused to threaten, and this is something we have to keep in mind. But once it's proven, then this would be one case that even if the husband is saying no and the wife doesn't want to maintain that abusive relationship, she can get out of it. Number three, if the husband abandons the wife and does not provide for her for more than 3 months continuously. Abandon her and the children, doesn't even care. And if this goes on, then she has this option of getting out of that relationship. Or if the husband divorces the wife in a secular court, but does not give her the religious divorce. This is just to, harass her. That, okay, legally you are divorced, but religiously you are not. And if this option is there, then she can easily get her talaq also done. Or even the other way around. Sometimes things happen in such a way that things didn't work out, and the wife ends up obtaining a divorce in the secular court, and that itself basically is a very clear indication that there is no point of return. If there is a secular divorce done in the court, it means reconciliation is completely out of the picture there, and there is no need, to just keep this situation hanging. Let us now end with the last sentence from verse number 7. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said that those husbands who have zu sa'atin, who are affluent, Allah has blessed them with wealth, they should maintain their divorced wife till the time of the iddah according to their means and maintain the same standard of living during that time, 3 months. And those who are restrained as far as their income is concerned, they should do whatever they can. Allah doesn't ask them to do more than that. But then at the end, again, this is one more promise that Allah gives, the way He has done in the previous ayat, where He says, يَجْعَلْ اللَّهُ بَعْدُ عُسْرٍ يُسْرًا. That Allah will, hopefully bring about yusr, easiness, after usr in life. But there is an implied condition based on the ayat that we saw before. Man yattaqillah. Provided taqwa is maintained. Taqwa ilahi is our move, and Allah's promise is based on that. That if you have that taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His support would be there. He will find a makhraj for you, a way out of the problem. He will make your things easy. And here also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after usr, I will make things yusr. I'll make it easy for you. And this is where, we'll conclude with this part. Let me just emphasize that what we had talked till now is that when it comes to nikah and talaq, nikah is the most beloved thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas the talaq is the most disliked permission that Allah has given. And so it is allowed, but as a last resort. Things have to be done as far as reconciliation is concerned. Quran actually in Surah Baqarah, I think, yes, there is a entire provision that if you have a situation of conflict, get somebody from the side of the wife's family, somebody from the husband's family, ask them to sit down, look at the issues and propose sulh. Reconciliation should be the first, priority in any conflict within the marriage. But if it doesn't reach to that point, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is again allowing it, but He puts stringent conditions there. Obligations, the issue of what is the timing that talaq can be done, the presence of just witnesses is an important issue there. And even then, especially in the case when the husband is initiating the divorce, the issue of not, throwing the wife out of the home during the iddah time, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you don't know, maybe things will change. Maybe your mind will change. So that 3 months still living under the same roof is an opportunity to, bring about reconciliation between the husband and the wife. And these are the issues that we have to keep. And again in this segment of 5 ayats, especially during the first 5 ayat of Surah Talaq, as I said, I have been studying Quran for a long time. I had never seen a case where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would bring in the issue of taqwa in between the rules and regulations of Sharia, again and again and again. And this is where, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would like to say, yes, I have allowed this, but always remember the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not something, to be taken lightly or easily. It should be the last resort, but that also should be exercised on the basis of taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our amal, give us the tawfiq to be true to the teachings of the Quran and the Sirat of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam.